In this video, we'll rediscover 30 kitchen treasures our grandparents once used, each with a story that'll spark nostalgia, and maybe even inspire your next shopping trip. Let's start with Grandma's wooden butter churn. Before butter was neatly wrapped in sticks at the store, making it at home was an everyday ritual that required effort, rhythm, and patience. My grandmother's tall wooden churn wasn't just a tool, it was the centerpiece of the kitchen, standing ready like a silent teacher. To a child, it felt like a magical contraption, but its secret was simple. Cream went in, and with enough work, golden butter eventually came out. Turning the handle was no small task. After just a few minutes, your arms burned, yet the steady thump of the churn became almost musical, filling the house with a sound that marked the pace of family life. Children would line up for turns, competing to see who could keep the rhythm going, while adults smiled knowingly, remembering their own aching arms from years before. Then came the reward. Watching cream split into butter and buttermilk felt like witnessing old-fashioned kitchen alchemy. And when that first pat was spread across a slice of warm bread, it tasted richer because it had been earned. Today, butter slips from a wrapper with no story attached. Back then, every pat carried the flavor of effort, tradition, and family. The egg separator. Before these clever little inventions came along, separating eggs was a nerve-wracking performance. One tiny slip of the hand, and your clear egg white turned into a yolk-streaked disaster, enough to ruin a delicate recipe in an instant. Back then, there was no safety net. Just careful hands, steady bowls, and a whole lot of luck. My grandmother had a porcelain egg separator shaped like a little chicken, and in her kitchen it was treated almost like a sacred treasure. It wasn't just a novelty. Invented in the 1920s, this small gadget was a lifesaver for home cooks. And during the Great Depression, when every egg and every ingredient mattered, precision was everything. Families couldn't afford waste, and this simple tool made sure not a drop went astray. The design was straightforward but brilliant. The egg rested in the top, while small slits allowed the whites to drip neatly into a bowl, leaving the yolk safely behind. Suddenly, tricky recipes like meringues, soufflés, and angel food cakes weren't out of reach for the everyday cook. That little separator transformed anxious juggling into smooth, confident kitchen work. An invention that gave home bakers a taste of professional precision. The flour sifter. Every serious baker once had a secret weapon, the flour sifter. My grandmother swore by hers, claiming it was the reason her cake seemed to float, rather than sit heavy on a plate. She'd pour a scoop of flour into the tin canister, grip the handle with practiced ease, and crank until a delicate snowfall of powder drifted into the bowl below. To a child watching, it looked like kitchen magic. Flour transformed into a cloud. But the sifter did more than just break up lumps. It aerated the flour, making it lighter and easier to blend. That single step gave cakes their tender crumb, cookies their perfect texture, and biscuits their soft bite. In the 1950s, as boxed cake mixes began sweeping across America, the humble sifter remained a symbol of true homemade pride. Today, many recipes skip sifting altogether, treating flour like any other ingredient. But anyone who's tasted a heavy, uneven cake knows why my grandmother never ignored this step. The hand crank meat grinder. Precision didn't stop at baking. Our grandparents carried the same careful attention into preparing their meat. The hand crank grinder wasn't just a kitchen tool, it was part of the household rhythm. My grandmother's heavy cast iron grinder clamped firmly to the edge of the counter, ready to transform leftover Sunday roast into freshly ground beef for the week ahead. Grinding meat at home was a matter of pride. You knew exactly what went into every cut. Nothing hidden, nothing questionable, just pure and honest food. With each turn of the handle, you could hear and feel the process, a reminder that good meals came from real work. It wasn't unusual for children to gather around, eager for their chance at the crank. What started as a chore often turned into a playful contest, with laughter mixing in with the steady rhythm of grinding. Modern supermarkets may offer ground beef in tidy plastic packages, but they can't replicate the satisfaction of meat ground by hand. Every spin of that handle was more than preparation. It was a quiet lesson in self-sufficiency, in respecting the ingredients you had, and in making the most of what was on the table. The potato riker. Ever tasted mashed potatoes so smooth they seemed almost like silk? Chances are a potato ricer was behind that magic. This clever gadget looked a bit like an oversized garlic press with a chamber for boiled potatoes and a sturdy handle to squeeze them through tiny holes. What came out weren't lumps or gluey clumps, but fine ribbons of potato that blended into clouds of perfection. My grandmother's ricer was a kitchen staple, its handle worn from years of use. She'd let me help sometimes, and to me it felt like crushing boulders into streams of snow. Each press was oddly satisfying as the potatoes slid through in neat little strands that piled up like soft curls in the bowl. Modern electric mixers may be faster, but they can easily overwork the starch and turn mashed potatoes into a sticky disappointment. The ricer, on the other hand, delivered texture that was pure, fluffy, and almost weightless on the tongue. For my grandmother, it wasn't just a tool, it was the secret to turning a simple side dish into something memorable. Do you remember your grandmother, or even you, using any of these tools growing up? The bread box. From fluffy potatoes to fresh bread, our grandparents had clever ways of keeping food at its best. Before preservatives and plastic packaging took over, the bread box was the quiet hero of every kitchen. My grandmother's chrome bread box, with its smooth roll-top lid, wasn't just storage, it was part of the home's heart. It gleamed on the counter like a promise that good food and good company were never far away. Practical and dependable, the bread box kept loaves fresh longer, shielding them from the air, from curious pets, and even from hungry siblings tempted to sneak a slice before supper. It wasn't only about food, it was about comfort. A well-stocked bread box was a silent invitation. Neighbors or family could drop by, and there was always something ready to share. To open that lid and pull out a warm loaf was to say, "You're welcome here." Today, bread is tossed in the fridge or freezer where it loses flavor and texture in the name of convenience. But back then, reaching into a bread box to find a hearty loaf was part of daily life. The milk bottle opener. Raise your hand if you've ever battled a stubborn milk bottle cap. For our grandparents, that was a daily routine. Before paper cartons and plastic jugs, milk arrived on the doorstep in thick glass bottles, chilled and waiting by the porch. To open them, you needed a milk bottle opener, a small but indispensable gadget that worked as faithfully as the morning sun. My grandmother kept hers hanging by the kitchen door, its handle worn smooth from years of use. Each morning, she'd pick it up like clockwork, greet the milkman with a smile, and pop open the day's delivery. That simple act was about more than getting to the milk. It was part of a rhythm that tied families and neighborhoods together. The milkman's visit often turned into a quick chat, a recipe swap, or a bit of neighborhood news. The opener itself was humble, just a shaped piece of metal designed to lift the cap, but it carried a sense of connection. Daily deliveries weren't just about food, they were about community. Today's cartons may be easy, but they've stripped away that small ritual. Back then, even pouring a glass of milk came with a touch of neighborly warmth. The Jell-O mold. Jell-O molds were never just desserts. In my grandmother's kitchen, they were showpieces, bright, shimmering creations that could define the success of a family gathering. When she carried one to the table, it was with a sense of pride, as if unveiling a sculpture. Inside the translucent layers might be fruit, marshmallows, or even the occasional shrimp, a combination that sounds unusual today, but somehow worked back then. These molds demanded patience, timing, and steady hands. One wrong move while unmolding, and hours of work could collapse into a sticky mess. But when everything went right, the result was a dazzling centerpiece that children and adults admired for different reasons. Kids loved the bright colors and the wobbly fun of each bite, while adults respected the skill it took to pull it off. There was even an old saying, "A party without a Jell-O mold is just a meeting." The cherry pitter. Sweet cherries with their stubborn pits and messy juice could be both a blessing and a headache. That's where the cherry pitter came in, a small but ingenious gadget that turned sticky work into smooth, satisfying precision. My grandmother's pitter was a sturdy little metal tool that looked unassuming but worked wonders. With one squeeze, the pit popped out cleanly, leaving the fruit whole and ready for whatever came next. A full bowl of cherries could be processed in minutes, sparing stained fingers and saving countless hours. During canning season, this tool was indispensable. Families worked side by side, preparing jars of cherries to line pantry shelves and carry a taste of summer deep into the winter months. As a child, I'd sneak a few cherries while helping, pressing the handle just for the fun of hearing that little pop as the pit shot free. It turned a chore into a memory. Today, many skip straight to store-bought pitted cherries, or skip the pies altogether. But nothing compares to a homemade cherry pie crafted with fresh fruit and a grandmother's trusted pitter. The corn stripper. Fresh corn straight off the cob has always been a summertime treat, but removing those golden kernels by hand was no easy task. Without the right tool, a knife would send kernels flying across the counter. That's why the corn stripper became such a hero in harvest season. Looking a bit like a cross between a peeler and a comb, it glided down the cob, zipping kernels off in perfect rows without fuss or mess. My grandmother's handheld stripper came out every summer, especially during barbecues and harvest time. She made it look effortless, stripping cob after cob, while conversations and laughter filled the kitchen. Neighbors often joined in, sitting on porches or around tables, helping prepare corn for the winter months ahead. What could have been tedious work turned into a community ritual, where food preservation also meant preserving bonds between families. The corn stripper wasn't flashy, but it was one of those simple innovations that worked so well it felt almost magical. Today, many people settle for frozen bags of corn or wrestle with a kitchen knife. But back then, this little tool turned hard labor into a satisfying rhythm, making summer's bounty last long after the season ended. What's the most unusual or quirky tool you've ever found in a family kitchen? The citrus juicer. Long before electric juicers crowded countertops, the simple hand-pressed citrus juicer was the tool of choice. My grandmother kept a sturdy glass model on the counter, its ridged center designed to coax every last drop from an orange or lemon. To her, it wasn't just a gadget. It was part of the morning rhythm. The process was slow but deeply satisfying. She'd cut the fruit in half, press it firmly against the ridges, and twist until the pulp gave way. Juice ran down into the base while the peel remained behind. Before long, the kitchen smelled of citrus oils, bright and clean, while sticky hands became a small price to pay for a glass of juice as fresh as it gets. In warmer climates, this daily ritual was essential, a way of starting the day with something nourishing and alive. Today's electric models may be faster and cartons of juice are only a grocery aisle away, but they can't compete with the flavor pulled straight from the fruit by hand. The hand crank cream whipper. My grandmother's cream whipper was nothing fancy at first glance. A sturdy glass jar fitted with metal beaters and a hand crank. But in her kitchen, it was a source of pure delight. She'd pour in fresh cream, secure the lid, and start turning the handle with a rhythm that seemed to come from years of practice. Before long, the pale liquid thickened into soft peaks, and the whole family knew a sweet reward was on its way. She often let me take a turn, my small hands struggling to keep the beaters moving smoothly. It wasn't quick, and it certainly wasn't effortless, but that was the point. Each rotation of the handle was a quiet lesson that the best things often require patience. And when the work was done, the payoff was heavenly. Pillows of whipped cream ready to crown a slice of pie, melt into a mug of hot chocolate, or be stolen by the spoonful when no one was watching. Cream whippers first appeared in the early 1900s and quickly became staples in well-equipped kitchens. They made desserts feel luxurious and reminded families that time and care were the most important ingredients. Compared to today's cans of convenience, the old whipper offered something richer. Flavor seasoned with memory. The nutmeg grater. The nutmeg grater was one of those small tools that proved how much impact the simplest gadgets could have. In my grandmother's kitchen, it wasn't just a utensil, it was almost a treasure. Nutmeg itself wasn't treated like an ordinary spice. It was an experience, something that could turn a plain dessert into a memory. My grandmother kept her little tin grater tucked safely in a drawer, always ready for special occasions. During the holidays, she'd let me help, placing the hard nutmeg seed in my hand and guiding me as I rubbed it across the sharp ridges. The scent that filled the air was unforgettable, warm, spicy, and comforting, in a way that no pre-ground spice has ever matched. Just a sprinkle over custard, pie, or warm drinks made everything feel festive. Nutmeg graters have a history going back to the 1700s, and in some households they were even handed down through generations. Some were beautifully crafted with intricate designs that made them as much a display piece as a tool. The pickle picker. The pickle picker might look a little whimsical today, but in my grandmother's kitchen it was surprisingly practical. Anyone who's ever tried fishing a pickle out of a slippery brine jar with bare fingers knows the struggle. The juice clings, the pickle slips, and before you know it, you've splashed half the table. That's exactly the problem this tiny gadget solved. My grandmother kept a spring-loaded pickle picker in her drawer, and she treated it with the same seriousness as her bigger tools. With a quick press, its little prongs would grab hold of a pickle and lift it out cleanly. No mess, no wasted napkins, and no complaints. As a child, I thought it was endlessly amusing, like a toy hiding in plain sight among the grown-up utensils. Watching it spear a pickle with precision made snack time a little performance. Though rarely seen today, the pickle picker was part of an era when inventors paid attention to everyday inconveniences and designed clever solutions. It wasn't about luxury, it was about making small moments smoother and tidier. The biscuit cutter. Speaking of small but mighty tools, one that truly earned its place in my grandmother's kitchen drawer was the biscuit cutter. Before people reached for drinking glasses or whatever round object was handy, the proper cutter was considered essential, one of those tools that separated the seasoned baker from the beginner. My grandmother's favorite was a fluted edge cutter that produced rounds so neat and uniform they looked like they'd come from a bakery. But it wasn't just about appearances. The sharp edges sliced cleanly through the dough, sealing it rather than compressing it. That small detail made a big difference, helping biscuits rise tall, fluffy, and even rather than baking up lopsided or tough. The fluted sides added more than charm. They created extra surface area that browned beautifully in the oven, giving each biscuit a golden edge no one could resist. Many cutters came in graduated sets, and experienced bakers like my grandmother always knew which size suited which occasion, whether for breakfast biscuits, tea time treats, or hearty dinner rolls. Today, shortcuts like glasses or cookie cutters are common, but the truth is clear. The right tool still delivers the best results. A proper biscuit cutter turned ordinary dough into something extraordinary. To continue with more content, comment yes to let us know you're still following. If there's anything we can improve, take a moment to leave a comment. We're always looking to get better. Thanks so much. The Kraut Cutter. From fluffy biscuits to rows of preserved vegetables, our grandparents kept tools for every season. One of the most impressive was the Kraut Cutter, a wooden board fitted with a razor-sharp blade that turned bulky heads of cabbage into fine, even ribbons. Long before food processors took over, this was the secret weapon for sauerkraut and coleslaw that tasted unmistakably homemade. My grandmother's Kraut Cutter came out every fall when cabbage piled high on the kitchen table. She'd set the blade, adjust it for the right thickness, and begin the steady rhythm of slicing. The sound of cabbage scraping against wood filled the room, a signal that winter preparations were in full swing. For me, it was both mesmerizing and a little intimidating. The speed of her hands, the neat pile of shreds forming below, and the quiet confidence that came from years of practice. This was no casual tool, it demanded respect. Too much pressure or the wrong angle could easily cut more than cabbage. But when handled properly, it rewarded patience and skill with perfect, uniform slices. Those ribbons fermented into sauerkraut that tasted worlds apart from anything in a jar, or into coleslaw that made every picnic plate complete. The asparagus tongs. At first glance, they might seem overly specific, but anyone who has ever tried serving a platter of slippery asparagus knows the struggle. Too much pressure and the delicate spears break, too little and they slide right back onto the dish. My grandmother kept a pair of slim asparagus tongs for special occasions. They were designed with just the right grip, able to lift the spears cleanly and place them neatly on a plate without damage. To her, they weren't only practical, they carried a touch of elegance. In fact, during the Victorian and Edwardian eras, proper asparagus service was considered a mark of refinement, a small detail that set a hostess apart. They reflected a mindset of ingenuity and care, solving even the smallest of kitchen challenges with style. The apple peeler corer. With its simple hand-crank design, it could peel, core, and slice apples in one smooth motion, turning what used to be a tiresome job into something closer to a show. My grandmother brought hers out every autumn when baskets of apples filled the kitchen. Instead of dreading the task, she turned it into an event. She'd clamp the machine to the counter, set an apple on the spike, and with a few quick turns, the fruit transformed into neat spirals that seemed almost too pretty to bake. For us children, it was pure magic. We'd crowd around begging for our turn at the crank, mesmerized as peel ribbons fell away and perfect slices piled up, ready for pies, crisps, or jars of preserves. Apple peelers became symbols of American ingenuity. Practical, clever, and satisfying to use. Even today, electric models exist, but none compare to the joy of the old hand crank version. The peanut butter machine. Peanut butter may be an American classic today, but in my grandmother's time it still carried a touch of novelty. The earliest machines that made it possible were hand cranked, resembling sturdy meat grinders. You'd load roasted peanuts into the top, turn the handle, and watch as the rich paste slowly emerged below. It wasn't quick, and it wasn't effortless, but the reward was smooth, flavorful peanut butter that tasted fresher than anything in a jar. The idea of peanut butter as a delicacy actually dates back to John Harvey Kellogg, who promoted it in the late 1800s. By 1896, even Good Housekeeping suggested women make their own at home. Later, electric versions brought more convenience, but the hand crank models remained a point of pride. The stovetop coffee maker. Long before single-serve pods and push-button machines, the stovetop coffee maker was a daily companion in my grandmother's kitchen. Made of sturdy metal with a simple design, it sat right on the burner, slowly working its magic as water bubbled up through fresh grounds. The process wasn't instant, but that was part of its charm. I can still picture my grandmother lifting the pot by its warm handle, the rich aroma filling every corner of the house. That smell alone was enough to pull everyone to the table. The first sip was strong, smooth, and satisfying, proof that good things were worth a few extra minutes. Though espresso machines now dominate coffee culture, many still swear by the stovetop version. Compact, reliable, and timeless, it turned coffee making into a ritual rather than a rush. For families like mine, it wasn't just a drink. It was the flavor of morning itself. The ceramic butter dish? On my grandmother's table, butter never came straight from a wrapper or a fridge shelf. It had its own place of honor inside a ceramic butter dish. Smooth, glazed, and often decorated with floral patterns, these dishes kept butter soft enough to spread while adding a touch of beauty to the table. At mealtimes, lifting the lid felt like uncovering a small treasure. One more detail that made even an ordinary meal feel cared for. Some families used French butter dishes, clever designs that held the butter upside down in a cup sealed by water. This created an airtight barrier that kept it fresh without refrigeration, a trick that seemed almost magical. Over time, refrigerators and convenience changed habits, but ceramic butter dishes remained timeless. More than storage, they were symbols of tradition, reminding us that presentation and care matter as much as flavor in a family kitchen. The tin pantry container. In my grandmother's kitchen, nothing was ever left to chance, not even the pantry. Flour, sugar, coffee, and rice each had their own home in sturdy tin containers, neatly labeled and stacked within easy reach. These tins weren't just practical storage, they were part of the kitchen's personality. Some were simple and utilitarian, while others came decorated with bright patterns or painted lettering that gave the shelves a touch of charm. Opening one always felt special. The faint scent of flour or sugar mixing with the cool metal reminded you that everything had its place. Unlike today's plastic tubs or cardboard boxes, tins kept ingredients fresh, safe from pests, and easy to find when cooking or baking began. Though they faded from fashion for decades, vintage tins have made a comeback. What was once everyday storage is now prized decor, carrying with it the warmth of kitchens past. Have you ever tried cooking with a vintage gadget and noticed the difference compared to modern ones? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The plastic salad spinner. In my grandmother's kitchen, salads didn't start with a plastic bag of pre-washed greens. Lettuce came straight from the garden or the market, dirt still clinging to its roots. That's where the plastic salad spinner came in. A bright, funky gadget of the mid-century that looked more like a toy than a tool. She'd rinse the leaves in the sink, pile them into the spinner, and with a few quick turns of the crank, water would fly off, leaving the lettuce crisp and dry. The rhythm of spinning was almost fun, turning a necessary chore into a small performance. Kids often begged for a turn, laughing as the basket whirred and the greens tumbled inside. Long before packaged produce promised convenience, the salad spinner gave families a way to enjoy fresh, crunchy salads at home. The handheld waffle iron. Before non-stick grids and electric timers, waffles were made with a heavy handheld iron that demanded skill and patience. My grandmother kept one for years, its thick cast iron plate seasoned from use. To make waffles, she'd pour the batter inside, clamp it shut, and hold it carefully over the open flame of her wood-burning stove. It wasn't a quick process. She had to flip the iron back and forth to cook both sides evenly, listening to the hiss of steam and judging by smell and instinct when the waffle was ready. Open it too soon, and the batter would cling stubbornly to the plates. Wait too long, and the edges would char. But when done just right, the iron released a golden, crisp waffle that tasted better than anything from a box. The dough bowl. In my grandmother's kitchen, bread always started in a dough bowl. These hand-carved wooden bowls weren't just practical, they were family heirlooms, passed down from one generation to the next. Wide and sturdy, they gave plenty of room for flour, water, and yeast to come together under strong hands. The wood itself seemed to hold the warmth of the kitchen, helping the dough rise while the air filled with that unmistakable smell of bread in the making. Kneading in the bowl was a rhythm all its own, almost like a song. Each push and fold carried with it patience and care, the same motions repeated by countless women before. Today, vintage dough bowls often show up as rustic centerpieces on dining tables, polished and empty. But in my grandmother's time, they were the heart of the kitchen, a place where simple ingredients became sustenance, and daily bread began with love and tradition. The simple electric food processor. When the first food processors appeared, they didn't look like the sleek machines we see on countertops today. My grandmother's model was a plain, boxy appliance with a simple blade and one speed, but to her it felt revolutionary. Instead of spending long hours chopping vegetables or kneading dough by hand, she could press a button and watch the machine do the heavy lifting in seconds. Cooking instructor Bonnie Stern once said, "The food processor is not just another trendy gourmet gadget, but a knife that is here to stay." And she was right. What seemed like a novelty quickly became indispensable. In a time when convenience was becoming just as important as tradition, this little machine gave families a way to save effort without sacrificing homemade meals. It may have looked humble, but that early processor symbolized the future, bringing power, speed, and a hint of modern magic into the kitchen. The hand-crank coffee grinder. Before the buzz of electric grinders, coffee started with muscle power. My grandmother's hand-crank grinder was a heavy wooden box, its drawer tucked neatly at the bottom to catch the grounds. Each morning, she'd scoop in the beans, sit with the box steady on her lap, and turn the handle in steady circles. The crank squeaked, the gears groaned, and the smell of freshly crushed beans filled the room long before the first sip. It was slow work, especially if you needed enough coffee for a whole family. But there was something satisfying about the ritual. You could hear and feel the beans breaking down, reminding you that the reward was worth the effort. Today, most of us reach for push-button grinders or pre-ground coffee. But back then, the hand crank grinder was part of the morning itself. A little labor that made the first cup taste richer and more deserved. The electric egg poacher. Eggs have always been a breakfast favorite, but poaching them by hand was never simple. Before electric gadgets, my grandmother relied on a special metal pan that balanced cups of simmering water, carefully holding each egg. It took practice and patience to get that soft, delicate result without overcooking. By the 1950s, the kitchen was buzzing with new electric helpers, and one of the most exciting was the electric egg poacher. Compact models like the Kenwood 3-egg version promised perfectly cooked eggs with almost no effort. All you had to do was crack, close, and wait as steam did the work. For busy households, it felt like a modern miracle, a taste of restaurant-style breakfasts at home. Though they've faded from most kitchens today, these little machines captured the optimism of their era. They were symbols of convenience, efficiency, and the promise that technology could transform even the morning meal. Did we miss a detail that you remember? Share your stories in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.